した。これから英語で話します。ごめんなさい。So, this film was a collaboration between myself and the Korean animation artist Eunjung Hwang. Initially, the animations were published in a book and later set in motion, digitized. So this project began with the animations. There existed already a version, a video, containing some of these images, and this was remixed into two versions, a Nagai and a Mijukai version. And we found that 9.5 minutes was about right. 15 minutes was too long. We began to recycle some of the events, some of the action. And so this wasn't really a collaboration, a typical collaboration, because the visuals came first and then the music came after. As you saw in the video, there was a lot of activity. It was very busy, a lot going on. So the video was divided into two scenes. In each scene there were objects, or characters, tied to specific events. And there was a kind of logic to this, where the final state of each scene predicts the initial state of the next scene. So a kind of algorithm. Obviously, there was a very fast rate of change, and also transitions between different scenes were kind of crazy, frenetic. So this created certain challenges to determining how to add audio to this. So there were a few questions. How to assign audio to video. On a very local level, each object getting an audio object, each event being assigned an audio process. Should there be a fixed relationship between video and sound? Should it be more statistical, more variability, assigning a kind of audio complex to each scene? Or, taking a step back from the surface, similarity between the way the video was made and the way the audio was generated. So structural similarities, or similarities in the creative process. Well, in order to determine a possible approach to creating the audio, I was posing myself these basic questions. So if the audio is just imitating on a local level what the video does, what is it really contributing? It's sort of Mickey Mousing, so to speak. It's just sort of playing a game with the video, but not really adding to the experience. I was interested in not treating the audio and video as always tied together, but rather dealing with audio perception, or auditory perception, and visual perception as different, but influencing each other, so that a change in the audio would influence how we perceive the video, and vice versa. So not always coupling changes together, but having changes occur independently in the different domains in audio and video. So the technique I chose, the primary technique for generating the audio, for generating the sound, was a technique called concatenative synthesis. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this technique. it's a subtype of granular synthesis. Essentially, a sound is segmented. Each segment is assigned acoustic descriptors. And then these segments are mapped to a different target sound based on mappings between the acoustic descriptor of the target and the acoustic descriptor of the segments. So, for example, one could reconstruct a Beethoven symphony using samples from Bach keyboard music, or a Beethoven symphony using animal sounds, or whatever. A Michael Jackson solo using saxophone samples, or etc. And in most software that supports concatenative synthesis, there are many possible approaches one could take to segmenting and also to mapping between segment and target. Here, for example, is probably the most famous program now for concatenative synthesis, produced at IRCAM. It's called CatArt. And this allows for real-time, interactive concatenative synthesis. These are the segments which can be mapped and ordered based upon a number of acoustic parameters that can be mapped to the x-axis and the y-axis. So these change, and that changes the ordering of the segments, which can be played in different ways. So the sound sources used for this project were varied. So first of all, urban and industrial sounds, given the fact that there were these kind of complex sort of landscapes and some urban type environments, this seemed appropriate. Given the sort of characters, the objects you found in the video, both animal sounds and human voices. Car alarms as a sort of subtype of urban and industrial sounds, given special treatment. And, well, given the fact that the visual artist was Korean, and I was living in Korea at the time I produced the video, some K-pop samples as well. Just to give you a simple example of the mapping between segment and target. So this is, was one target used in the video. I think this is Girls' Generation. And here's the concatenative synthesis version using animal sounds and human voices. So not so many samples in that corpus, but just to make it clear what's going on. And here's an example taking Lachenmann's Mouvement vor der Erstarrung and assigning the sounds of dog panting. Keeping the original rhythm, so that's to say the original onsets in the Lachenmann piece. Now, I didn't use the IRCAM software CatArt. Instead, I used a program called Audio Guide. This is developed for non-real-time applications. It was also produced at IRCAM by the composer Ben Hakbath. So it's code-based, allows for multiple possible segmentation algorithms as well as mapping algorithms. Here's just the audio guide homepage. And so that was the approach taken for the video. Now, since Future Creatures, since the time that I produced the video piece, I've been working on a series of pieces derived from the video, the FC Remap series. So these are for solo instruments, duos, and live electronics. And for these pieces, I didn't only take the audio material from the video, but also some of the images, which were analyzed and converted into sound data. Now, to move away from the two-dimensional projection surface, and also to integrate the electronics better with the instruments, in these pieces, the electronics are projected through transducers, which are attached to the instruments. So physicalizing the sound, just as I was physicalizing some of the visual data through analyzing it and converting it to sound data, in some sense. And so to date, there are 3 pieces completed in the series. The first for percussion, the second for prepared piano, and the third, quite recently completed, for alto flute and violin, also with video. Now, just to give you a couple of examples of the percussion and piano piece. So here's a bit of FC Remap Perk. And just from the beginning of FC Remap piano. So on. The percussion piece, it's in 3 movements. You heard it in the last movement, which was for zither tuned, microtonally tuned, with transducers on the zither, creating this kind of feedback loop. And obviously the piano piece takes a more literal approach to importing some of the material from the audio material from the video piece. Now, a future project is to make a game version of Future Creatures. We thought there was no reason that this should not be an interactive piece. And so this wouldn't be a game like your standard levels, gaining points, and so on, but rather exploring a game environment, manipulating different objects, visual objects, characters, having them completing events, but then having these events tied to different audio parameters. So in effect, one is learning to operate, to play these sort of small instruments. Each object, each character becomes its own kind of instrument. So this is sort of a next step in the process, not yet developed. So that is all from me. If anyone has any questions,
ありがとうございました。会場からアレクサンダー・シグマンさんにご質問等ございませんでしょうか。もしなんか日本語で質問されたいという方いらっしゃったらJSSA の英語が堪能なメンバーが手伝いしてくれて青田さんとか出されますキャンペラですので。はい、お願いします。
はい、お願いします。The basic situation of creation seems to be quite similar to making soundtracks of experimental short animations. What's the essential point of your present creation?
So, I understand the question. So, I guess the question was that so it seemed that the process for creating the film was fairly standard for experimental short animations.
Yes.
And so, what's different about this? Well, I suppose it has less to do with the process, although the way I usually work with video artists or directors is not video first, music and sound after, but usually developed together. In this project, it was less to do with the creative process that was different from standard, but more to do with the specific nature of the video and dealing with a level of visual complexity and determining how to develop audio that would be of similar complexity, but not a determinate relationship. Not every audio object is every video object is assigned exactly one audio object. I think that's a little bit more typical. You see action in a film or an animation, and you hear a sound. Because my intention was not to use sound to orient the viewer, in other words, to create a realistic environment, but rather in some ways to disorient those. Sometimes there are correspondences, and sometimes there aren't. And it's this flickering relationship between the audio and the visual. So that was sort of my point of entry, I guess. I hope that sort of answers your question.
はい、ありがとうございます。他に何かありますか。はい、じゃあ。
In your sound synthesis, you introduced concatenative synthesis. In general, if you say concatenative synthesis, you use for example, sinusoidal model and you just concatenate. But today's example is try to express some sounds in terms of other sounds. So is that my understanding correct? You try to express playback sound in terms of another sound. That's the example that you showed.
Yes, exactly. So the question was the intention to express sound in terms of other types of sound? Yeah, the mapping was important, and it wasn't so much a question of being able to identify the targets. It was more the fact that having a target sound, a sound to which other sounds were mapped, made the sound goal-directed. So I was interested in controlling, for example, density, for controlling, let's say, frequency regions that were being highlighted on a large scale, not just having kind of arbitrary local densities. And so this was not the only way, of course, but one approach to making the audio goal-directed in a similar sense that we're using a similar method to the video.
So I did get the latter half. You say the tool has the expression ability to express the sound in terms of another sound, but it's not your final aim, but rather try to express the density of frequency or something. Did you say?
In other words, to use one sound to build the structure of the piece, articulated by different surfaces.
すみません、なんかローカルでやってるとあれなんで、質問したのは、一つの音を表現するのに別の音で表現するっていうツールを、紹介してくれたわけですけど、それが本当にやりたかったことですかという質問をしましたら、その理解が合ってるかどうかですが、そういうこと以上にその、スペクトルデンシティですかね、こう密度あるいはストラクチャー構造とか、そういったことを表現するのにこのツールを使ったというような発言をしたと思われますが、この理解間違ってたら誰か訂正してください。
ありがとうございました。それでは、ご時間となってしまいました。この後もしご質問ございましたらですね、中村重信さんの発表の後に時間を取っておりますので、個人的にもご質問いただければと思います。それではアレクサンダー・シグマンさん、どうもありがとうございました。